Thank you. So if you've not heard of us before, we are a recreation management platform. We work with parks and rec agencies across the United States and Canada to deliver a first-class customer experience. We are a true SaaS company, so we take great care to continuously iterate and optimize our product to provide the best experience not just for you as an organization, but your customers as well, giving the online sign-up and registration experience that you need. And the great byproduct of that is we become the sort of center of your registrations and your information to allow the sort of digitization of everything, to allow the back end to function better and to sort of fully embrace the digital possibilities of a platform like this. But we are not here today to sell the platform. We're here to share knowledge. So if you could go to the next slide, please. We have much more. As I mentioned, we have much more Parks and Rec resources on our website. If you go to amelia.com/library, you can find all of the stuff there. We've recently done some webinars on data, on about how to recruit and retain Gen Z employees, community center research. There's a whole bunch of stuff there that's available for you if you want to check it out. We'd love to see you there. Next slide. All that's left for me is to give some means of an introduction to your presenter today, Sarah. So Sarah's our manager of customer education here at Amelia. Her job is to make sure that all of our new and existing customers get the maximum value possible out of the platform, that their onboarding process is as smooth as possible, and really partner with them to make sure that your success is our success. She comes to us from an education background, which obviously fits quite well with the role here. And as someone who works with her day to day, I can say it's just a wonderful colleague and a great person to have around the office. So I'm going to pass it over to you, Sarah. Take it away.
Nice. Thanks so much, Mike. And thanks to all of you for joining us today. So there are three things that I hope to accomplish and that you walk away with today. The first is I'd like to give you the tools and frameworks so you can properly diagnose the problems or opportunities for improvement within your organization and identify the root causes of those challenges and opportunities. Once you've done that, I want to help you evaluate all of the different solutions that you come up with yourself and with your trusted advisors, and how you can ensure that those solutions are aligned with your mission and strategic priorities. And then finally, once we've looked at, what are some of the challenges we're facing, what are the different solutions that we could find for them, if technology is a solution that you're considering, I want to help you evaluate vendors with a critical lens so that we can avoid any of that post-purchase regret. In my own experience at Amelia, I've evaluated several software vendors, especially in the learning management space. So it's a topic that I'm super familiar with. I have an understanding of the different tactics that vendors will use to sort of make their thing look appealing to you, but I'd like to kind of get into the right questions you can ask to make sure that you're going to be able to get value out of the solution they propose. Before we dig in, I'd love for you to share in the chat, how does the word change make you feel? And this could be change in a life sense or change in terms of a switch in technology from, let's say, your current provider. I'll give you a couple of moments to share in the chat. Amber says hesitant and excited. Yeah, change can be riddled with positive and negative emotions. A mixture of excited and distrustful. Yeah, especially when you're switching technology, you want to make sure that all the promises you got during the sales process are actually going to come true in the implementation. Cautious, yes, it's important to evaluate the risks before we consider a technology change. Unsure, that's a good one, Ashley. We don't know. We don't really have a crystal ball, right? We don't know if change is going to go the way we hope it will. Exciting, good. That's a good attitude, Susan. A little nervous, but mostly excited. And then we have another exciting from Chris. So that's great. Most of you have a very positive outlook toward change, and that actually aligns with how we feel about change here at Amelia. So yes, change is hard. There's a lot of emotions involved in that, but it's usually worth it. And we know that some of the challenges that agencies are concerned with today are things like budget constraints and funding gaps. workforce development and succession planning, accessibility, equity and inclusion in park access and programming, to name a few. And we know that when it comes to change, that many government agencies, such as the ones that you likely are employed by, have this mentality of, if it isn't broken, let's not fix it. Stability is really important, and that's for very good reason. We know that change takes planning, it takes a lot of resources to execute successfully, and it can take convincing of a lot of different stakeholders within your agency to actually embark on that journey. And then when you do decide to change, you want to make sure that you're evaluating all of the risks correctly, so that, you know, that change brings the value that you were hoping it was going to give. And what I would say today, as we talk about looking at the different challenges that your organization faces, I think one of the things we can really try to do is switch our perspective on the challenges that we're facing and think of them as opportunities to set the stage for success. It is important to know when you need to stand still and continue with the status quo, but it's also important to know when taking a leap is going to bring that value that you're looking for and that good and exciting change that you're looking for. So when we are considering our entire organization and we want to look at, hey, is there any way that we can improve the way we're running, even if things look like they're running pretty smoothly right now? We would suggest sort of fostering a culture of continuous improvement, where you make it a habit to constantly review the different processes, tools, things within your organization. Or you can do it more formally, kind of on a yearly basis. And what you'll consider when you look at your agency as a whole, when you're conducting this type of audit, is really your community, your processes, your tools, your facilities, your parks, your software, and of course, the staff that help you keep things running. So first, let's talk about how you can get the full picture of those challenges and opportunities your organization faces, as well as the different solutions that you can employ. So we're going to talk a little bit about how you can use gap analysis to be able to do that. So there are a few things you want to consider during this process. There are actually three main things. So people, facilities, and technology. And oftentimes those three elements are going to inform the different processes that your organization has. So today I'm going to hyper focus on people, facilities, and technology and leave the process part out. In terms of your people, when you're painting a picture of your people, we don't just mean those folks that are employed full-time by your agency. This actually encompasses everyone that can benefit and or help your agency. So it can include residents, non-residents, people that are visiting, so like tourists, if you have a lot of tourism in your city or town, your staff, so everyone from full-time employees to those seasonal employees that you might hire for the summer, for example, your leadership team, your elected officials, and if you have a board, your board members. In terms of partners, of course, we know government is a big partner, local donors and NGOs, and then sometimes local businesses that you might partner with to offer different things to your community. In terms of facilities, so we used to say that customer experience starts in the parking lot when we think about a facility, but actually today it goes even beyond the physical spaces that we occupy, like our buildings, our facilities, and even our parks. It actually starts on your website or on your social media pages and in your partner locations. So for example, like a local library that you might work with to offer certain programming. So when you think about your facilities, I would encourage you to think beyond the physical facilities that you have and really have that experience with your community start on your social media pages as well as your website. Technology. So technology has a lot of different facets. So it's the hardware and the software that is powering your day-to-day. This can encompass both technologies that you folks select, as well as technologies and maybe even pen and paper processes that your employees are using to help them in their day-to-day. For example, some of your employees might have decided to use a free version of Slack to be able to communicate between divisions, or Facebook Work to be able to have access to a chat throughout the day. Pen and paper processes. So you might have these kind of very involved processes that use different technologies that don't speak to each other, and then the occasional post-it or two to be able to note down information about a client, for example. So really having an understanding of what are your staff using in their day-to-day, and how can we make that more efficient? And then how can we make the other tools and systems that we've selected communicate better with one another so that we can run things more efficiently? Once you have an understanding of sort of your people, your facilities, and your technology, it's time to find a group of trusted advisors that can help you on this diagnostic journey. So you'll want to consider people that have different perspectives. So when you look at, let's say, your staff members, we don't want to have maybe only the leadership team involved in decisions like this and discussions like this. You might want to look at a few trusted full-time employees that have been with your organization for a little while. You may also want to seek support from various partners, especially partners that have expertise in technology that might be able to help you take a more critical lens when you're speaking to vendors. The other thing that's really important to consider is, can this person be objective during this process, or are they so attached to the current way that we do things that they're going to have that tunnel vision? You want someone that can really take a macro perspective and look at how your organization is running as a whole. The other thing to keep in mind is that it's important not to get caught up in offering a democratic process, right? So whenever we get hung up on like 100% of people need to agree on whatever solution we're choosing, we're never going to make a decision that's going to work for everyone. So chances are, if you find something that's going to work for 90% of the folks at your organization, that's going to work just fine and bring you the value that you're looking for. So in terms of how many people should be involved in this process, we'd say anywhere between 1 to 3 folks from each of the key groups. Once you've identified the people that are going to work with you on this exercise, then it's time to take a look at your data and your reports. And if you don't have access to this information personally, we'd suggest connecting with folks within your organization that can get you that info. And some things that you'll want to look at is your demographics. So what are the types of people that make up your community? Is there a certain age bracket that is bigger than another? Do you have a community of young professionals in their early 30s? Or do you have a community of elderly folks that might actually have difficulty registering for programming online? Then you want to look at your community's buying habits. So are they seeking that sort of self-serve, online first experience, or do they need a little bit more hand-holding? How do they buy? And are you catering to those habits as well as you could be? Then you want to look at things like your sales across divisions. So here you're looking at your membership sales, facility rentals, programming attendance, your client retention. So folks from your community, whether they're residents or non-residents, who've purchased a membership 1 year, are you noticing that they're continuing to purchase a membership to have access to your programming or facilities, or are they canceling and deciding to go somewhere else? If those things are trending down, those are signs that you need to look at why that is. And then, of course, attendance for specific classes to know what's popular, what's resonating with your community, and maybe what needs to be reconsidered. And once you've looked at that data, Then you can turn back to those trusted advisors and ask this sort of question that we all know, right? The magic wand question. But I would encourage you to ask it a little bit more strategically, because you're armed with your data, right? So you've already got some clues on what are the trends in my community, what are the things that are coming out as frustrations, things I need to focus on. So you would go ahead and ask your trusted advisors, if you had a magic wand and could change anything about those trends that you're noticing to make our organization better, where would you start? And then at this point, we just want to generate as many ideas as we can. You can dig deeper on those ideas and different challenges that come up by using an approach like the 5 whys. I did not invent the 5 whys, Simon Sinek did, but this is a really nice way to dig into, okay, we're having issues with a really long check-in process. Why is that? And normally, if we can ask the same question 5 times, we'll get to the root cause of why the check-in process takes so long. And one of the things that's important to note is oftentimes once you get to that 5th why, you're in a very different place than when you first identified the problem. Some other important questions that you can ask, either at scale or in one-on-one conversations with the different people that are part of your community to understand a problem. So here we have, for example, we noticed declining service usage among residents. So something we could ask our staff is, why do you think people are no longer purchasing memberships from us and not renewing their memberships? What do you think is causing people not to sign up? In terms of your residents, you might want to use more of a skilled approach to talk to them, like a survey. You can ask them directly, why did you decide not to renew? You can give them multiple choices and ask for clarification when necessary. And with your current residents, you can ask them directly about the programming you're offering, whether you're filling all of their needs or if there are gaps that you hadn't considered. You can also ask them whether they're considering renewing their membership or not, and why. And then here are just some ideas for ways you can talk to these folks. So you can take a more qualitative approach in person or over the phone. This tends to work well with your staff members because they're going to be a little less shy with telling you their true feelings about how things are going in your organization. And then in terms of your residents and non-residents, you might want to employ something like an online survey or even something that's self-directed in person if people prefer pen and paper in your community. There are many survey tools on the market. At Amelia, we use SurveyMonkey. We have a slight preference for it just because it has lots of templates that you can use, and it will create initial visualizations that'll help you analyze the data you collect. Google Forms and Microsoft Forms are also great options as well, and those are free. One of the things to keep in mind if you're going to run a survey is to try to keep that survey as short as you possibly can. So 10 questions or less. If you can get it to 5, then you're going to increase your chances of getting responses. The other thing is you want to steer clear of too many open-ended questions, right? Because that's also going to make it harder to analyze the responses that you get. So if you can do those things, you're going to increase your chances of getting the information that you're looking for. And then it's time to analyze all of that data that you collect through your in-person conversations, as well as your surveys, and then the talks that you have with your trusted advisors. What we'd encourage you to do here is to actually segment the answers by the different audiences. So let's say instead of lumping comments from your staff, your residents and your non-residents all together, we might want to separate out each of those 3 groups and see what type of trends and patterns come up. You may also want to separate out the audiences even further. So residents and non-residents, it might be worthwhile looking at something like age to see if there are trends based on different age groups and other stuff like that. You can leverage, if you're collecting some of the more qualitative responses to, let's say, an open-ended question, one way you could analyze it is through use of a word cloud. So word clouds will often synthesize a bunch of qualitative information and come out with the most popular keywords. So here in this particular community, we see that they really want more pickleball courts. They're interested in swim lessons, dog parks, accessibility. And then we're also seeing that some folks are having a hard time registering for summer camp. And then there's like an emerging trend of cricket, let's say. ChatGPT is also a good tool to help you analyze large-ish amounts of data. One thing to keep in mind with ChatGPT is you'll want to make sure that you're using a paid version. Otherwise, you're entering all of your survey data into the public domain, which you may not want to be publicly available. What we'd encourage you to do throughout the data analysis process is to actually save any positive feedback that you uncover. When you're going through a process like this, it's very easy to get caught up in all of the negative comments and want to address those immediately. But what we don't want to forget is the things that our community loves about the way we do things, or our programming, or the different offerings we have available. So I would say save that positive feedback and make sure that the solutions that you implement are going to be able to preserve the things that people appreciate. And once this exercise is completed, what you'll start to have is different buckets of issues that you're noticing. So here we have things like declining service usage among residents, difficulty registering online. There's a competing fitness center in the area that has more modern equipment than we do. We're having difficulty filling classes. And we've considered lots of different perspectives on these problems too, right? Because we've involved people from our community, we've involved our staff, and we've involved key partners in these discussions. So at this point, our goal is not to start prioritizing the problems. It's more to generate as many as we can. We're in the discovery phase. And once you do that, you can start to craft your problem statements. And you'll notice that maybe some of the challenges that your organization is facing are interrelated, and they're all connected to the same overarching problem. So that's what we want to use the problem statement for, is we want to clearly say, what are the problems to fix? When did the problem start occurring? Who's impacted by this? And what are the suspected root causes of this problem? And I have an example for you here. So here's an example one. Our community center has seen a 4% decline in the last year in sales. Our front desk staff turnover has hovered around 20%, and we have difficulty filling our specialty classes, which typically feed into new membership sales. Our research shows that our registration management platform has prevented members from self-registering online, and they over-rely on front desk to open their files and take payments. Front desk staff manually enter information in 3 different places to complete the process. This causes unnecessary friction. So here at the top, we've clearly identified those symptoms: decline in sales, high staff turnover, hard time filling our classes. And then below, we've clearly identified what we think are the causes of those things. So now we're ready to actually look at what solutions could help us solve these problems. And like I mentioned a little bit earlier, an overall problem of declining service usage among residents might be linked to many of the other problems that came out in your research. So lengthy check-in experience, poor registration process online, unhappy front desk staff, having to deal with impatient clients. You can leverage a tool called a strategy screen. This is a popular tool in the nonprofit space, but I think it applies for government agencies as well. And essentially, The strategy screen is a way to evaluate the different solutions that you come up with to make sure that they're aligned to your mission and your strategic priorities. And if something is not aligned to your mission or your strategic priorities, then chances are that is not a solution that is worth pursuing at this time. If it is aligned, then you can think of sort of all of these elements as a funnel. So then you'll want to evaluate the strengths, the financial impact, whether or not you have the resources and staff capacity to execute on that solution. And then that's ultimately going to empower you to make a decision about whether or not you should pursue it. You can list out the different solutions in a table like this, and then just use a scale of 1 to 10 to evaluate whether or not it's aligned with each of those elements. If something is rating below a 7 on mission and strategy, I wouldn't pursue it further. Let's say you get into a situation where all of your proposed solutions are rating 7 or below. Well, at that point, it might be time to go back to the drawing board and generate a few more solutions that might be better aligned with your mission and strategy. From there, you'll want to leverage a future vision statement to be able to guide you through the vendor selection process. So a future vision statement should describe what the process should look like moving forward, when the solution should be applied, who's impacted by it, and then what specifically are those solutions. And here's an example. So our solution involves implementing in the next 3 to 6 months a user-friendly registration system that allows for online registration and payment collection from any device. This will give our staff more time to focus on key projects to improve our programming and maintain our facilities, enhancing the overall resident experience. So we've clearly up top articulated the solution, and surprise, since we are in a technology buying webinar, the solution here is technology. And then we're looking at the problems that implementing that new technology will help us solve. So now that we have a good idea of what are our challenges, what are our opportunities, what are the solutions that we want to pursue, we want to start thinking about requirements. And here I would like to challenge you to reframe the way you traditionally would think about requirements, let's say in an RFP that you're preparing when you're looking at vendors. When we buy a product, we essentially hire it to help us do a job. If it does the job well, the next time we're confronted with the same job, we tend to hire that product again. And if it does a crummy job, we fire it and look for an alternative. So this quote is from an HBR article, Harvard Business Review. You can always count on Harvard Business Review for great nuggets like this. But it really highlights that we need to start thinking about technology as something that's going to help us achieve certain jobs, rather than a thing that has this big list of features that I need. If we know what we want to accomplish with a piece of technology, we're much more likely to get value out of it rather than going in and saying, I need all of these different features or I can't use this product. It's a subtle change, but a very important one when you're thinking about evaluating vendors. So we want to ask ourselves, what jobs does the solution need to help me do? If you start with clear jobs to be done and the outcomes you're looking for based on that future vision, you're headed in the right direction. And from there, you can also think about the different scenarios in which this piece of technology will be used, as well as the different people that will need to interface with that technology and what they'll need to do in that technology. So in technology, we'll often refer to that as permissions. So what types of permissions do these people need to be able to do their jobs to be done in the platform? And as you're considering what jobs to be done this piece of technology will help you with, you want to beware of the edge case trap. And an edge case is a situation that happens once in a blue moon. When it does happen, it causes a lot of heartache and it's very irritating, but it is something that's really one-off and not going to happen every day. So for example, let's say you offer different membership types in your community for different size families. And let's say one day you have a family that comes in and they have 9 children and you don't have a membership that you sell that can accommodate 11 people. Super irritating in the moment to come up with a creative solution, but how often is this going to happen in the day-to-day? And should this be a huge consideration for us when we're evaluating technology partners that can help us create our memberships? So here's how you can leverage that future vision statement to actually craft the different jobs to be done that you're looking for this technology to do. So for example, in our future vision statement, we talk about finding a system that's user-friendly. And in our jobs to be done, we have to clearly say, well, what does it mean to be user-friendly? What do I want my residents and non-residents to be able to do when working in this software? So for me and my situation, it means being able to purchase their memberships, classes, or facility rentals on their own from any device that is web enabled. So meaning from a desktop, a laptop, or even a smartphone. It means being able to manage their own account with little intervention from my staff. And then it also means being able to get help quickly from a staff member in as few clicks as possible if they need it. The other thing it means is they're able to pay with installments, scholarships, or grants, and receive flexible pricing based on where they are located. And you would do this exercise for each stakeholder that will use that piece of technology. So whether they're administrators who are going to build out your programming, your front desk staff, and then of course, your community members that are going to be registering for classes and purchasing different things through the software. Here, it might come in handy to also consider your full tech stack. So going back to the beginning of the presentation and thinking about that whole ecosystem of technology that you use. So you may also want to look for a solution that integrates with technology you're already using at your organization. We'll talk a little bit more about integration a little later in the presentation. And this is that original sort of, you've probably seen requirements lists that look like this in the past, where it's just a list of different functionality that you require. Does this technology have it? Yes or no? And if it doesn't, well, maybe we won't use it. And what I would encourage you to do is actually say goodbye, Barbie, to that initial list of requirements and really reframe it as, what are the different jobs to be done I need this technology to do? And if you shift your perspective from features and requirements to understanding what you need to achieve, the chances are you're going to find much more value in the solution that you select. So now we are ready to evaluate the different vendors and choose a partner that we can have a long-lasting, valuable relationship with. There are 8 different things that I'll cover when approaching this process. And I'll start off with aligning with your jobs to be done. So I think we've talked a lot about jobs to be done, but here you'll really want the vendor to actually demonstrate that they can do the jobs you need it to do in a live demo environment rather than through screenshots or different slides. You may also want to request access to a demo environment so that you and your trusted advisors or even other members of your staff can actually test out the software before you decide to purchase it. Then you'll want to look at ease of use. So ease of use is not only do I know where to click and when I'm trying to do something, it really encompasses a lot of different things. So search engine optimization, is it easy for people to find this site? And then of course, device agnosticism, does it work on a laptop, a desktop, and a smartphone? We know that more and more folks are actually purchasing most of the things they're purchasing online from a smartphone. So it's really important that different technology vendors are able to offer that mobile first experience. Experience, reputation, and stability. So this is with regard to the vendor company itself. So questions that you'll want to ask is, does this vendor have experience with similar organizations as yours? And that may not only mean like, do they have customers in the Parks and Rec space, but do they have customers that serve the same size of community that I have? Because there might be big differences in how a smaller community runs versus a large one. And have they solved similar problems to the ones that I'm experiencing right now? And oftentimes vendors will have case studies on their website that you can take a look at that will highlight the different problems that they solved for their customers and how they went about that. Reputation. So online review sites like G2 and Capterra are great places to look to see what other folks that have similar needs as you do think about this vendor. You can also check out their website for customer testimonials as well. They'll often have those displayed. And then stability. So how long has this organization been around? Is it easy for you to see who's actually leading the organization, whether that's from information on their website, or can you find these people on LinkedIn? What are the organization's financials like? So this can be intimidating to ask about, but I think especially if you're signing a multi-year contract with a vendor, it's a question that you're 100% entitled to ask is, are you profitable? What's your merger and acquisition strategy? So are you looking to be acquired in the next couple of years by another vendor, and how would that affect your customers? Of course, no one has a crystal ball and can see into the future. Businesses, they roll and they evolve very quickly. But I think as long as the vendor is being transparent about what their vision is, how they're running things, what's important to them, and what are they prioritizing, those are green flags that you can look for. If they have trouble responding to these questions, then that's kind of a red flag. Integration. So integration is an interesting one, and I'll use a personal anecdote here. So when I was looking for a learning management system for us to use at Amelia to be able to train our customers as well as our staff, during my initial search, I kind of got caught up in that requirements list. And I got fixated on this idea that I needed it to integrate with Salesforce because other business units within Amelia use Salesforce. But what I didn't consider was, what job to be done do I need this integration to do? So I have the Salesforce integration, but ultimately that Salesforce integration is not able to accomplish the things that I would have needed it to do. So this is something that's really important when you're considering integration, and how important an integration is with this technology and that technology that you use at your organization, is what really do you want to accomplish with that integration? What information do you need from it? Because otherwise you're going to pay for it. Often the integrations have an extra price tag and they cost a little bit more. So you want to make sure that that investment is worth it and that you're actually going to leverage the integration. When integration is done right, it equals time saved, error reduction, and of course, a better experience for both your staff, and your community. Can it handle peak time demand? So here I'll use an example that many of you are likely familiar with summer camp, right? Summer camp is a very competitive time of the year where parents are trying to register their children, often for limited spaces in the different programming you offer in the summer. So you have a situation where, for example, there are 2,000 parents trying to register their kids at the same time to 1,000 spots. Can this vendor handle that type of volume, handle that magnitude of people all trying to do the same thing at once in their platform? And a good way to see how well the vendor handles this is actually to check out the Facebook pages of their customers and look for those peak registration times, because parents are very vocal when this goes well and when it doesn't go well. So if you're seeing comments from frustrated parents saying, oh, the system went down, or, oh, I had to wait 3 hours in a queue before I could register my child, and then there were no spots left, and I'm really frustrated, this is all pointing to maybe that vendor can't really handle that peak demand. Or is the frustration coming from, oh, I didn't get a spot, but I was able to access the registration? So these are important places you can look to see if that vendor is actually delivering on their promises of being able to handle the volume that you have in your community for things like summer camp registration. Next up is security and compliance. I know this is increasingly more and more important, especially with those new laws coming out of Colorado around web accessibility, WCAG compliance, ADA, security. So how easy is it for you to get access to your information? Is the privacy policy easy to find on the vendor's website to understand how they handle and process data? Is privacy a big priority for them? So you might want to look to see if they have any web pages that describe sort of their position on privacy. What you want in a vendor is someone who goes beyond just checking off a compliance box, but is really making privacy, accessibility, and security a top priority when they're developing their product. How do they support their clients? So this is an area that I know very well, both as a customer and as someone who works in customer education. So here it's important to ask the question of, how will you support me during my onboarding process? Is there a dedicated implementation specialist? Are the timelines clear? Is someone going to help me do that risk assessment to make sure that everything is accounted for so that this change goes smoothly? In terms of training, are there different types of training available that cater to different budgets and different learning styles? So do they offer live in-person training, live online, self-paced online courses, video tutorials that you can easily find? And here with training, the other really important thing to keep in mind is we get really caught up in training during implementation only, right? Because we're just getting the software and we need to get everyone supported through the change. But what about that ongoing training? Does the vendor offer any type of support when you're onboarding your seasonal staff, for example? Is your agency one that tends to have a lot of turnover in the front desk staff? Are there supports in place that will help you train and retrain folks throughout your relationship with this vendor? And is it easy to get access to? Support. How long does it take to talk to an actual person? It's okay if organizations leverage things like an AI chatbot as a first sort of layer of support. These can be great in getting you the answers you need quite quickly. But if ever that bot is not giving you the answers you need, is it easy for you to say, hey, I just want to speak to a person? And how long does it take to get a response from the person? Does the vendor have a service level agreement for how long it'll take to get an answer? Is it easy to find the help center? Is the help center user-friendly? Is it available in the languages that, the different folks in your organization might need it to be in? Does the organization provide release notes so that I could stay up to date about the different changes and new features that might be available and how I might leverage them at my organization? What's the escalation process? If I have an emergency or if I'm not satisfied with a response, is it clear who I can speak to get my query escalated? Do I have a dedicated CSM that's going to support me throughout my relationship with this vendor? Will we have quarterly calls or monthly calls in the beginning? These are all important questions to ask to make sure that you're successful in your implementation and in your ongoing usage of a software. And then finally, the vendor roadmap. So a good vendor should be able to give you insight on their short, mid, and long-term plans. So long-term in the tech world is often 3 to 5 years, and then short-term can be anywhere, 3 to 6 months. Is it important that they're ultra specific in terms of the roadmap? No, but I think it's important that they have overarching themes that are driving the decisions that they're making with their product. So you want to look for, what's your development process? So do you release improvements on a regular basis, or are you releasing them, let's say, on a quarterly or a yearly basis? And what is that going to mean for you as a customer? What does the support look like for you when they do make changes in the platform? Does the vendor have trouble saying no? So when they talk about their roadmap, does it seem focused or is it kind of all over the place? If it's a bit all over the place and not focused, that could be a red flag. Or if you're noticing that their roadmap is really geared toward not your needs or not your industry, then that might be an indicator that maybe this isn't the right partner for you. Communication, so how are changes and improvements communicated about? And then can you get early access to functionality, either as a beta tester to be able to provide feedback on that functionality, or because you have the need and it's available? Product feedback, so how do customers give feedback to this vendor about features that need improvement or features that they wish existed? Is there a customer advisory board that is consulted in the roadmap prioritization? Are there surveys to ask for feedback? And then, those beta programs. And then finally, like we mentioned, so how often are those improvements and enhancements coming out? And then can you opt in or opt out of them based on your interests and readiness to adopt them? So in sum, this is the framework as a whole. So you'll want to start by painting your picture where you identify your challenges and opportunities, and then you brainstorm and evaluate your solutions, and then make sure that those solutions are aligned to your mission and strategic priorities. And then from there, you want to craft your formal problem statements and a future vision statement to sort of guide you in the next steps in the process. Then you want to reframe how you think about requirements. So instead of thinking about the features that you need this technology to have, reframe it to think about the jobs to be done that you need this technology to help you with. And by group. So what are the different jobs to be done that those who are managing your programming need? What about your front desk staff? And what about your residents, non-residents, and other community members? Then you want to evaluate your vendors. You want to consider those 8 key evaluation areas that I discussed. And you want to really look for a long-term partner who can support your strategic priorities and help you achieve those outcomes that you so desire. And then if you do all of those things, you dig into the challenges, you find their root causes, this is going to help you make sure that you're using that critical lens when you're speaking to vendors so that you can find something that's going to bring value to your community for years to come. that takes us to the end of our presentation.
I cannot turn on my video, but that's fine. I'll just sit here as a black screen for a little while. Wow, thank you so much. That was amazing. I especially like the points you made about not getting caught up in the requirements list. Like as a marketer, we buy a lot of tech and we are surprisingly vulnerable to marketing. You would think we wouldn't be as marketers, but like just being able to focus on those jobs to be done and get a solution that ticks off most of them is going to be better than searching for an ideal solution that honestly may not exist for everybody. Does anybody have any questions? We got one question about the recording. I will be sending the recording out in the next probably 48 hours to everybody who's registered. Thanks for the comment there, Amber. That's really appreciated.
Thanks, Amber.
Try and make things applicable and replicable. You know, that's what this is all about. Is there anything you want to add as a closing thought, Sarah? Oh, we've got another question. Hold that thought. Oh, the question was not a question. It was just someone saying, "Excellent, thank you." That's nice.
Oh, you're welcome, anonymous.
Yeah. Any closing thoughts from you?
No, I mean, I think that was the big thing for me too, though, reframing your requirements as a job to be done. And I think it's something we can all apply in any technology that we're looking for.
Yeah.
That was actually a point brought up by someone in our sales team, actually, who's very familiar with the sales process. And that's sort of a golden nugget to take away with you today.
Seems, yeah,
Thank
they definitely know a lot about that. I was going to make a dig at salespeople as is tradition, but I said, you know what? No, I'm not going to do that right now. Well, listen, thank you very much to everybody who joined and stuck around for the whole presentation. We didn't lose anybody through that whole thing, so I really appreciate your presence and sharing this information with you. We have a new webinar coming up that you should receive an email about very shortly. This is our Parks and Rec expert, Chris Nunes, is coming back, and he's doing a webinar entitled, I can't remember the exact title, something to do with a goldfish and other leadership lessons from Ted Lasso. So I'm intrigued and I can't wait to join him for that. So once again, thank you very much from everyone at Amelia. We really appreciate your presence today and hope you have a wonderful rest of the week.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much,
Take
Sarah.
care.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.